Welcome to Perspectives in Mobile, the news podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Join us discussing the world of telecommunications, technology, and mobile innovations. From Florence, Riccardo Amati.
Twilio enters the second half of the year at an interesting crossroads. Following a strong first quarter marked by renewed growth and improved operating performance, the market is now closely watching how profitability, AI messaging, economics, and customer engagement evolve ahead of Signal Berlin. As communications platforms mature, the bigger question is no longer just growth, but where the next phase of value creation comes from. Welcome to MEF Podcast Series Perspective. I'm Riccardo Amati, and today we are going beyond the numbers to understand what Twilio's recent performance tells us about the future of CPaaS, customer engagement, and enterprise communications. I'm delighted to welcome Jake Kanter, Vice President of EMEA Sales at Twilio. With a decade at the company and a front row seat in its evolution, he brings a perspective on how Twilio is navigating growth, AI, messaging transformation, and changing enterprise priorities across Europe and beyond. Thank you for joining, Jake.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me, Riccardo. Excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, and in our conversation, we'll explore what really changed inside Twilio, whether the company is moving beyond commodity CPaaS, how AI is reshaping communications demand, what the future for the mobile ecosystem could look like over the next few years. We also get an early perspective on what to expect from this very important event, Signal Berlin, and the themes shaping Twilio's next chapter. So, first question, Jake. First quarter was described internally as a milestone quarter. I think it was your CEO definition. Strong growth, sharply improved operating income, renewed market confidence. But beyond the headline numbers, what actually changed operationally inside Twilio that made this quarter different from the last few years?
Well, that's a great question. I think there's actually not a lot that has changed just in the last quarter that led to this performance. I'd point to the work that we've done over the last several years. Twilio, like a lot of companies, has seen the AI disruption that's going on, and our focus has really been how do we sit ourselves at the center of that disruption? How do we enable our customers to utilize the Twilio platform that we've been building for over the last 10 years and really infuse that into their AI strategy? And I think what you saw in the first half of this year is that strategy, start to come to light. We're starting to see the increase of communications that's going on because of AI. We're starting to see some of the bets that we place, come to fruition. And because of that, we saw some really strong first quarter performance.
Yeah, so if you had to define the biggest change you witnessed during the last 10 years, I don't know exactly how long have you been in Twilio, more than 10 years, isn't it?
I've actually had two chapters at Twilio. I'm what we call Boomerang, but the second chapter is 9 years now.
Right. So if you had to, stress a change that you witnessed,
I feel like over the last 10 years or so, I've seen Twilio go through a lot of different chapters and evolutions. And what I really like about this current chapter that we're in is, in some ways, it feels like we're returning to our roots, to our beginning. When we started as a company, Twilio was really hyper-focused on developers and on the builders of the world. Those that have been to San Francisco may have seen our kind of famous
that was the dream. That was the first scenario that you had. Okay.
Exactly. It said, ask your developer.
You're going there.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So, and I think now what we're seeing is we're kind of seeing a return to that moment in technology, right? We're seeing the companies that are leaning into building, the companies that are being curious, the companies that are leveraging all of the new capabilities to build these new ways to interact with their customers. Those are the companies that are being successful. So really the change that I've started to see take hold over the last couple of years is we're returning back to that way. Right? We're returning back to companies that are innovating, companies that are testing and always building new things and trying to find new ways to do things that maybe they've done the same way for the past many years. Those are the companies that are finding success. So for someone like me that's been at the company for a long time, it's just been really great to see.
Right. Critics for years described CPaaS as an infrastructure market vulnerable to commoditization. Sorry. Twilio now talks much more about orchestration, intelligent trust, branded calling, conversational tooling. So, am I correct in saying that the strategic ambition now is to move beyond being a communications layer?
Yeah, I think we've always thought of ourselves as more than just a communications layer, more than just a CPaaS provider. But what I will say is the importance of that communications network, that global network that we've built, that we've hardened over the past many years, is inherently very valuable, and it's very hard to recreate. You'll hear Kozema, our CEO, sometimes say, you can't vibe code up a carrier agreement, right? These are very complex agreements that we have in place with carriers all over the world. Building this network at scale, having it be reliable for the hundreds of thousands of customers that use the Twilio platform, it's no easy feat to replicate. So although we think of ourselves as moving beyond just the communications layer for our customers, that is still very valuable. I think the shift that we're seeing now is customers are thinking more, two and three dimensionally about what they can do with those communications. So they're not just thinking about how do I send a one-way text message. Now a lot more of our conversations are centering around how do we engage customers in conversation, right? They're not just thinking about inbound contact center use cases with agents on one end. Maybe they're thinking more about how do we build AI agentic experiences into that contact center. So for us, I think we think of it not as, getting away from CPaaS, but it's really just an evolution of how customers are utilizing that technology to find, better, more engaging experiences for their customers.
And is there a pivot? Is there something that, for example, investors, you are a listed company, should have, on their site, something that can demonstrate that you're shifting from just, as you were saying, you're not leaving the communication layer, but you're shifting to something different. What's the pivot there?
Yeah, I don't know if I describe it as a pivot, but I do think the kind of results speak for themselves. And we're seeing a lot more adoption of our non-messaging products. Voice has had some of the best performance and the best growth we've seen in the previous few years. And that trend looks like it's only continuing. Right. So rather than a pivot, I think it's just incorporating additional uses of the platform. It's new use cases. It's things that previously weren't possible because they were too expensive, because you needed to use a human resource, are now possible because we've got these agents that we can deploy effectively. So from a where we're going standpoint, I think it's just continuing to evolve, continuing to focus on those multi-product, those more platform-oriented use cases with our customers. And, those are always the customer relationships that tend to be the longest lasting, the most high impact, is the customers that have really adopted the full breadth of the platform.
Insisting on this point, so messaging remain core, but other things are happening. Carrier fees, pass-through dynamics, channel fragmentation, as a very, very complex picture. Would you say that messaging volume matters less than messaging quality and orchestration now?
I think it's a good question, and I don't know that it matters less, but I think both certainly matter. For a long time, I think the companies, tried to just grow messaging or grow their communication volumes as quickly as possible. But we've seen a lot of dynamics in the industry that make that really hard, right? We see fraudulent use cases on the rise, bad actors, really finding ways to make that network, the messaging ecosystem, more noisy and a little bit less trusted. So where we've really focused is branded communications, making sure that we have, each touch point with the customer is a touch point of value, that they know who's on the other end of that communication. But then I think some of what you're getting at is also really focusing on two-way, right? It's how do we take that one-way, outbound notification saying your package is going to arrive, make that into a two-way conversation, right? How do you actually have a rich engagement with the customer versus, sending an email that says no reply at? That's really where we're focused on our customers, is how do you, take what was a simple use case or a simple customer moment and try and build that into a more meaningful engagement.
You mentioned trust, which is probably, the the magic word for messaging.
Yes.
What's the challenge there with all, the new stuff coming? Talking about AI or even quantum computing, when it'll be there,
Yeah.
it would be terrifying to try and stop this kind of cyber attacks or, just frauds.
Yeah. I think as we look at the industry, we've collectively seen a huge problem when it comes to voice spam and fraudulent calls. And there's a lot of focus by Twilio and other players in the ecosystem to ensure that we don't have that same experience across the messaging channel, right? Or that what happens today isn't going to get worse. And as we see more messaging channels come online, like RCS and WhatsApp, that provide the opportunity for these more trusted branded experiences, that's where we really see the future going, is when you have the opportunity.
Do you see RCS as a response to the problem?
Yeah, there's more vetting involved in RCS as you get your sender stood up. There's ability for customers to kind of know and see the logo of the brand that is communicating with them. So that really helps and make sure that, if you see something that's unbranded, you're going to think twice about whether or not you can respond. And as we see more and more adoption of these types of branded channels, both on the voice side as well on the messaging side, we think that just increases trust in the network overall, and it'll make those bad actors, their jobs actually a little bit more difficult.
For a company such as Twilio, what does success in messaging look in the next years? More traffic, better monetization, or greater fidelity, greater customer stickiness?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. So even though we have a quite a large and growing messaging business today, still a lot of our customers have been a little bit reluctant to use the SMS channel. They may be still relying on email in a lot of cases, or they may just only use it for simplistic use cases. Maybe it's one-time passcode. So I think we are seeing growth in some of those core Twilio use cases in the messaging space that have been around for a long time, but then also unlocking those higher value two-way conversations and really just trying to make sure that the value of the channel is increasing. Messaging can be an expensive channel, so we want to make sure that as customers are sending those messages, they're actually getting some return on that investment.
You're heading European and Middle East and Africa sales. What's the difference between European enterprises behaving and the US? Normally, in Europe, budget are more, anyway, are the European companies loosening their budgets? Are European customers still cautious about, for example, richer messaging services? What's the difference? US, Europe?
Yeah, I think I see a lot. So my career and background is spent mostly in North America, actually mostly in San Francisco and in Silicon Valley, working with some of the largest companies of the world. I also spent time covering our financial services and healthcare sectors. And I'd say in those two industries in particular, there's not a huge amount of difference. Right. I think the benefit of working for a company like Twilio is, we present a lot of trust to the customers. They understand that we are a global platform, that they can, trust us with their communications, their critical communication workloads. And I think that earns us the right to have those more forward-looking conversations. So in Europe, there may, be a more complex regulatory environment that we need to be aware of, but those same, general types of structures or considerations exist in North America as well. I think European companies right now understand that this is a moment for innovation. And you don't have the opportunity to sit idly by and say, no, we're just going to wait and kind of ignore AI and let it, become more baked or let other companies do the experimentation. We see fantastic companies that are at the cutting edge in Europe, and we see more and more companies kind of leaning into that techno optimism, right? Seeing this moment as an opportunity to really bring value to the business. So I think there's a similar, level of excitement that's tempered maybe with that more complex regulatory environment.
So you're seen by your clients as a global company, not a US driven one. And which areas are underestimated by the market, in your opinion, at the moment?
I think it's a good question. I think voice is still just at the early days of really a true renaissance. Voice was in some ways a forgotten channel for the past few years, and as these real-time speech models, as voice AI has just become more and more human-like and cheaper and lower latency and more effective. I think the reality is oftentimes the traditional perspective of voice was, okay, you're going to call into a contact center. There's going to be a robotic voice that reads off some options. You're going to press 1 for this, press 3 for that. And it just wasn't a great experience. Now, I think the reality is rather than sit there and wait on hold, some customers may actually prefer, no, connect me directly to a voice agent that can handle 80% of the questions that I have or get me most of the way through solving my problem. And yes, they still want the opportunity to escalate to a human when that's needed. But if you have to choose between waiting on hold for 15 minutes and making zero progress on your inquiry or your problem or whatever the reason for calling in, or just getting connected right away and making progress, I know what I'd choose. And I think we see that reflected in our customers' preferences as well.
Do you see consolidation in the CPaaS market in the near future? Because we have, the scale players and the specialists on, there are these two parts of the industry. Do you expect meaningful consolidation across this market?
Yeah, I don't know if we spend too much time thinking about CPaaS competitors. I think we continue to invest in our underlying network. We know the importance of high quality routes. I think if anything, the importance is only increasing as, we see more voice use cases, we see more, messaging volumes overall. So, our focus is just continuing to strengthen what we have today. I think consolidation could happen. It's definitely a possibility, but not something we spend a lot of time thinking about.
Right. So you were mentioning AI and AI agents and, customers' behavior from the point of view of a sales manager. Recently, you launched Agentic AIs, okay? And your narrative suggested, I followed the presentation, suggested communication system need memory. This is the main point, isn't it? Orchestration, continuity across channels, but first, memory. Do you see this as a real enterprise shift, or are we still early in experimenting this kind of technology, memory in
it's a good question. And I think we are still relatively early. There's a lot of different ways that people are trying to solve this problem of memory and context. From a Twilio standpoint, we feel like we are really, really well positioned to offer a great solution here for our customers, right? We sit right at the communications layer where these interactions are taking place. We have phenomenal data assets from the acquisition of Segment and how we've built those capabilities into the broader Twilio platform. And I think the way that we feel we're solving this problem for our customers is, you see headlines these days of IT departments going through their entire AI budget in a matter of months for the years, right? Spending millions and millions of dollars on tokens. And what we know is that AI can provide a huge benefit and great value to the business, but it also can be very expensive. And you need to think about token optimization and figure out, when is the right time to actually bring in 100% of the context. What we think is if you have an intelligent memory product, you can actually get a more complete view of the customer for that specific interaction, but also do so in a more efficient way, right? That, is going to result in you sending less tokens across and just being more efficient with your spend overall. So it's still early days in this space and in this area, but we're quite excited. And the feedback that we've received from customers that are already building on this product has been, fantastic.
Jake, can you give me quickly an example of an agent with memory? What does it mean, memory for an AI agent in the messaging market? And take into account this, one of the critics that one could do to the AI agentic the system is that people needs conversation and the agent anyway, not a person, this kind. So from this point of view, what memory could change, in the AI
it's
agentic conversation.
Yeah, there's so many different directions it could go. But the way I like to think about it is when I'm interacting with a brand, right, I'm going to have all of these various touch points.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the things that I'm browsing on the website, right? Maybe it's the last time I called into the contact center. Maybe it's a review that I left, on one of their web properties. Really, the idea of memory is you need to be capturing each one of these touch points, each one of these interactions with your customers, so that whoever or whatever is interacting with your customer, be it a human or be it an agent, they have the necessary information to make that experience personalized, right? To make it relevant to the experience that they're having. So if I'm, going through a contact center and, I've been stuck talking to an agent and I had a pretty poor experience, well, you're going to want that company to be running sentiment analysis, right? As a consumer, I want them to know that I had a frustrating experience so that when my conversation with that agent, the AI agent, gets escalated to a human, well, it has the memory of that interaction. I think we've all gone through those experiences where you call into a contact center, you speak with someone for 20 minutes and they say, "I'm sorry, I can't help you with this problem. Let me transfer you to another department." And that person doesn't get the context. They don't have the memory of that previous interaction. Then you're stuck repeating yourself and, you're getting a little frustrated.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
So
it happens every time. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the core
Tell the
concept.
story
Is
again. Yeah, okay, I
there's
understand.
no need for that experience to exist, right?
I see.
Fundamentally, technology has the ability to solve this problem. And that's what Twilio's memory offering is looking to do, right? Whether it's a human handoff to a human, it's an agent to a human, it's me within my app on, doing things and then getting that into a contact center. There's just so many different touch points that can create a through line of customer experience.
Jake, Twilio is a member of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, MEF us. MEF members span operators, messaging companies, identity providers, mobile platforms, this kind of entrepreneurs. What is one structural shift in communications that the ecosystem is still underestimating?
Yeah, I think there's, it's a very complex ecosystem that we operate in. And where we see a lot of benefit is when the ecosystem comes together and tries to create consistent frameworks for customers. So specifically when we as an ecosystem fail to do that, and we have fragmentation across KYC or, onboarding of new phone numbers or whatever it may be, it just creates more friction for the customers. And one of the most common pieces of feedback we get from customers, both big and small, is, with the regulations or the requirements consistently shifting and changing, it's very hard for them to keep up. And, a lot of our customers operate in an ISV capacity. So it's, businesses that we sell to that then sell to their own customers. And just the amount of time and calories that are spent on trying to clear out some of the noise from the messy telecom, system and industry is quite labor intensive. So as much as we can work together across, the various different pieces, the MNOs, the CPaaS providers, the ISVs, the, vertical solutions that sit on top, that provides the most benefit for customers, and it benefits everybody, right? It leads to more communications. It leads to more people being able to utilize this technology.
You have Signal Berlin coming up.
Yes.
What will you present? What will you highlight during the show? Give me a news. Give me some.
I wish I could give you spoilers, but unfortunately I'd get myself in trouble with the marketing team. But what you can expect is we're going to double down on a lot of the themes that we spoke about in San Francisco, which again is really around, conversations and how you can actually utilize the Twilio platform to, better build your agentic experiences. It's going to be something you're going to hear a lot from us because as we spoke to, we're still early days. We've also got some specific kind of European, more relevant releases that we're going to be sharing, but we're really excited for this event. Signal is just such a fun time for us to be able to host our customers, to be able to get, both existing customers, people that have, never heard of Twilio before that want to learn more about it, to really come together and understand, who it is that we are and what we do. And the way that we put on our events, we always try and tell this through stories, right? And oftentimes it's customers telling the stories themselves. And then we've got to give it a little Twilio flair, so you can expect some live demos, but it's going to be a great event, and we're very much looking forward to it.
So we will expect something doubling what you presented in Signal San Francisco about the agentic AI. That's the news.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we could expect more of those same themes, and great conversations.
We will be very. I will be very curious to see what's going on Berlin. Last questions. What's the more exciting, if you want to call it like that, aspect of your work you expect in the next year and a half?
I think the most amazing thing for me is how easy it is to start building. So with some of the innovations that we're building into our platform, just in terms of how easy it is to get started with our new One Console experience, the agentic tooling that we've built into that, but also, other tools in the ecosystem like Lovable that just make it so easy to go from an idea into your head, into an actual full-blown application. And we're really seeing this, right? We're seeing this in the number of signups that come to the Twilio platform. We're seeing this as tailwinds for our business and just how many new use cases and new customers are getting started. And what excites me is that there's just going to be new companies that, haven't existed in the past that are going to start taking over. And we've always found ourselves at the center of that developer innovation. And, what this moment really means in technology is there's more developers, than there ever were in the past. I myself can, go in and start vibe coding things, even though I'm not a traditional programmer. And that just unlocks the creativity of builders all over the world. And that's a great moment, I think, for technologists.
Thank you even for your personal view on this. Thank you, Jake Kanter. That brings us to the end of this episode of my podcast series, Perspective. Jake Kanter, Vice President of EMEA Sales at Twilio, joined us, shared tool insights on Twilio's transformation, the future of messaging, economics, AI-driven communications, and what may define the next phase of growth across CPaaS ecosystem. So thank you for your insight and for your time, Jake.
Thank you, Riccardo. Great to be here. I look forward to chatting again soon.
And thank you all for listening. We hope today's discussion offered perspectives on where enterprise communications, customers' engagement, and the mobile ecosystem are heading. I'm Riccardo Amati, and this has been MEF Podcast Series Perspectives. Good luck with your work, everyone, and thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to Perspectives in Mobile. Join us next as we explore telecoms, technology, and mobile innovations. Stay tuned, stay connected, and let's unlock the mobile potential together.